Only when it rains.
It's not raining that hard.
It's raining somewhere.
Yeah, when it keeps raining. Oh. So does the church have all of these? That smaller show up on the bottom.
It's a smaller TV. The other one's not working. The other one is not working. Well, it's working. It's got a big black stripe in the middle.
Okay. Kathy, this has been a time.
We don't know what it's.
Oh, we
What
should
is
have
it?
like the
Career.
skit, give you the Real Housewives of Locos.
That might be a show.
That would be an all-time reality.
She kept the same
Yeah.
theories.
You know what? Look at some. Years back, he did something, Father.
What's that? Years back did what?
They did a show.
Housewives?
Oh, yeah, they did.
Yes.
The Housewives of Locos?
Be the housewife is better.
Oh my gosh.
It wasn't so much. It was
People
40
from St. John's,
Yes.
okay?
If they had a color.
They did, they used to.
Oh,
have
talent
plays.
show.
Nobody was.
They would show play, perform
Okay.
plays. different
Yes.
things.
So Philoptochus has talent.
I think so.
Okay. Talent show. Okay. All right. I believe we did the first paragraph. Am I correct?
Yes.
First
Yes.
paragraph. Okay.
We're on chapter 13, right?
Yeah.
Chapter 13. Yes. So
We're on number 5.
So we concluded with worshiping the dragon. We give authority to the beast, dragon Satan, beast the Antichrist, and they worship the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? Who's able to make war with him?" So, so the beast is still, as I said. What do we say about the Antichrist? Is a human being. Okay, he's still a human being, born like everyone else. Most likely,
And is that incarnate?
Satan does not incarnate. Yes, Satan enters people, but does not become incarnate. They cannot take on human nature.
Do you have to invite him then?
You have to invite him, like personally,
When
like
the Antichrist, because you said he's going to bow down to him, right?
right, yeah.
He can only enter a body if he's invited.
Oh yeah, it's just like a vampire, you know. You have to invite him into your house.
Well, I don't know.
Right?
What about the poor soul that had the demons, the legions? in him?
Yeah, at some point he issued an
Invite them.
invitation.
Huh?
Anytime we sin, we issue an invitation.
A conscious one?
You know, if we sin consciously, yes.
We're sitting unconscious, like if we're not realizing that we're sitting, are we still?
We are
inviting?
always vulnerable. Right, we're always vulnerable with every sin. Basically, it's Satan's influence that comes through us, that we allow Satan to act through us.
Right.
Hopefully, it's through us and gets out.
Okay.
But if the sin becomes habitual, then that demon
Well,
finds, more comfort and decides not to leave. And then he decides to invite his friends. Right? It's just no different than a home that's, if you leave it open, eventually somebody's going to come, and sit inside. If you have a guest that keeps coming right to the house and then they end up squatting in your house, right? And then it's hard to get them out. So if it's unattended, right, then they might make it a home. So your job is to always kick them out, right? Either by realizing our sins and repenting, doing this, receiving communion, right? Going to confession. We don't want to make the devil comfortable in our own home, right? And so you don't want to invite him either. And in fact, not only do you not want to invite him, you also want to repel his advances, his attacks. So January, for example, is good, right? Is a time that we bless our homes, right? We bless our homes. So whether you invite the priest to bless the home, when I was in Sioux City, Iowa, I blessed everybody's home. It took me 3 weeks, and about 50 malabacarona later, and then about an average of 6 to 7 pounds. My first year was, God bless them, So you went to everybody's home. You put it in the bulletin. I'm going to be in this neighborhood on this day. I'm going to be in that neighborhood. They all lived in little neighborhoods. One of the neighborhoods was called Cretenville. They're all Cretans. So it was a park, and all around the house were people from Crete. But then there was a lot of different sort of like clusters of home. You went to one, and then you walked to the others. I was only there for 3 years. But what I had, didn't know the first year is to make the right combination of homes. Like, so some homes were like, have a coffee and a macaron and go. Others were, a 7-course meal. So which is fine as long as you can combine in your 6, 7, meal of the day, you can combine just a couple of meals and the rest to be coffee. When you have 5 of them being meals, then it's a problem, and be like, but when you went to bless the house, the rest of the neighborhood will come and says, you ate more at so-and-so's house, and you're not eating the same here, So, yeah. So, anyway, but there you bless everyone. Here, obviously, will be physically impossible, but you do take the holy water home, and you bless your home. How do you bless your home?
Say a prayer as you're sprinkling water.
Right. So you take the water, you take something to sprinkle with, right? And if you have a cross, you sprinkle with a cross and something to sprinkle with, basil plant, evergreen, whatever. And you take your livani, and you take the bowl of water, you go around the house. If you can remember to sing either the hymn of the cross or the hymn of theophany. But then you start from the front door. Just like a Pascha, you burn a cross at the front door, you bless your front door. And then you bless every room, right? Every wall. So crosswise, you make the sign of the cross inside your room. And then you bless every window and every door. And if you have icons, every icon. That's how you do it. So if you watch the priest, it's an unwritten formula, but that's how it's, we usually do that. We bless every room in the shape of a cross, and you bless every door and window. Basically, the things that you let things from the outside, you let in light, you let in people, well, just the ones you want, unless they have a warrant, So, you're careful about what you let in. That's why you have windows. That's why even outside the windows, you have screens, so that you can open up in the summer and not let the bugs in, right? Well, likewise, yourself, you are the temple of the Holy Spirit. You are a home. You protect the things that, the devil uses to enter into your house, into your thoughts, into your heart, your eyes, your ears, all your senses. And you're supposed to, just like a window is supposed to only let in light and hopefully block out cold or block out heat or block out bugs, right? And then to keep all the bad stuff out. Every time we sin, especially when we sin consciously, well, then you are basically inviting him to come into your house. And hopefully you realize it right away, and you swiftly kick them out. And then you go to confession and you seal the window which you use to break into your house, right? So if I break my window, I invite in cold air, right? Okay, and then what do? I fix that window, right? I kick the person out first, and then I fix the window. Okay, that's how you're supposed to do this. And we do that consciously and diligently every day. So that's why when we go to prayer at night, kind of recount our sins and ask forgiveness. And once the holes in your house get too many, or at least if we had the opportunity, any opportunity, you go to confession and seal that hole. Okay? And then bless it, and hopefully the devil won't use it again. Unfortunately, what happens, just like a thief that knows they can get in and out of your house without being caught, if you're not aware, well, they'll keep coming, right? They'll keep coming, and sometimes there's no reason for it, just malice. That's what they do. My dad's restaurant was down the street, and So for a time, there was somebody from the Y back then when they had people in the Y that would walk over. They would walk over in the middle of the night and break a window and just go in there and just make a mess. You know, and the worst is when he broke glasses inside where the ice is. So you had to like melt all the ice and then get everything out to make sure you get all the glass out. I mean, you never found any money. It was trouble more than anything. And you know, my dad would get there about 4:30 in the morning. He would see him inside, but had no cell phone, right? So he'd go down to the police station. So and so is in the side, you know, somebody's out at the store. By the time they came back, he left. He kept doing it. Like every 2 nights, he would come back. He would come back and come back. And finally, he got caught because basically went through the window, bled, cut himself. And he was bleeding and walking back to the Y. And so then they asked him, like, you know, what are you doing? Why are you bothering these people? It's like, well, I was in jail. I'm now at the Y, and I just want to go back to jail. It's like, you know, right? So, again, it could be, so the devil can come in just, you know, yeah. So our job is to kick him out continuously. Read your scriptures, pray, ask forgiveness in a prayer, go to confession, you know, have the sacrament. Because, right, if he stays in too long, well, then he gets comfortable, and then he invites out the friends, and then next thing you know, you're no longer in control of your own house. Okay? So, and that's how you get to have legion, right, inside. There was a conscious, admission of the devil inside of you at some point. At some point. Either you personally, or maybe somebody did it for you, but there was something. Either you let your guard down, or you ever had the, you know, you get the evil eye, right? Right? So, but, and we're worried about, oh, somebody's doing magic on me. Somebody went to, well, my job is to protect myself. My job is to protect my house. If I'm doing my job, people come to me all the time, panic stricken. I think somebody's done my on me. I think somebody's done my on me. I'm like, well, it's possible. You broke somebody's heart, obviously. You know, you left them at the altar, so they, you know, whatever. I mean, stuff happens in life, and sometimes we piss the wrong people off. And they might go to people that pray to Satan, and they might send some bad stuff your way. No different than people that pray for you and send good stuff your way. I mean, we can send good things, we can send bad things to other people. Your job is to, well, always be strong at all times. No different than our immune system. I mean, we all went through COVID, right? What they kept telling you. Have your zinc, you know, have your immune system strong, whatever, right? So take care of your health, be strong, you know, and I mean, you can't stop viruses and bugs from going around, but you can't control everything around you, but what you can control is your own immune system. If you do that physically, you can also do that spiritually. So, the beast, who's like the beast? The beast is the Antichrist. He will enter a person who will bow to him. So just as Christ did not bow to the devil when he promised him all the kingdoms in the world, this person will bow. All right. Bahia, what happens after he bows? Can you read 5 through 8, please, for me?
And he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. And he was given authority to continue for 42 months. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. It is granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. All those who dwell on earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world.
Okay. All right. So it was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. What is blasphemy? What is to blaspheme? To deny, right? To speak falsely about God, right? So against God. So to say that Jesus is not God. So it's more than, we hear blasphemies in common occurrences, right? I mean, it's, we say, we say it in English, GD, in Greek, same thing. I mean, but those are not, the language, as bad as they are, those are not what this is referring to. This is not just a foul-mouthed person. This is a person that blasphemy is to deny the divinity of Jesus Christ. If you deny the divinity of Jesus Christ, you also then deny the Trinity. Those two things go together. Right? To deny the Trinity is to deny God as he exists. So therefore, blasphemy against God, his name, his tabernacle, and all those who dwell in heaven, right, is to dethrone God's from his authority, and to take that authority to place man in knowledge to be all powerful and self-made and independent. So to replace God with idols, to replace God with science, to replace God with logic, to replace God at the center of the universe with man, and to make man God. And to blaspheme, why is it something that is very common, not just in basically foul language, but it's very common today to hear blasphemies against Christ when he's reduced to a philosopher / teacher rather than God, right? Because, that's kind of the main reason why Christianity gets singled out of all religions. Not that all religions haven't been persecuted at one time or another, right? All religions have been persecuted in different times. But what we notice, especially in our context, that Christianity sort of gets singled out because it has an incarnate God, God in your face. And how do you make Christianity more palpable with a human-centric, a humanistic society, a human-centered society? Is to deny the divinity of that incarnation. Yeah. What's that? No. Is to deny the divinity of the incarnation. Same reasons why we try to exalt science above faith. Same reason why we try to, find life in other planets, right? So that, kind of the backdoor purpose of that is not just scientific curiosity, or whether we can settle, human settlements in the moon or Mars or in other planets, but negating sort of the central theme of the Bible, which God became incarnate, right? He took on human nature, and human nature is the epitome of God's creation. If I can show that there's other humanoid species somewhere else, right, then there's a hole in the Bible. There's a hole in God's creation of the world that is very earth-centered, that God only came to earth. Well, if there's other beings with logic and free will somewhere else, well, then who is their God? Is there a God for every planet? Is there a God for every species? Are we not then, if there's other species that have the same characteristics, even though they might be green and slender with big heads and, but maybe then we are products of evolutionary development, right? That's the whole concept of, again, placing science, like evolution, above faith. Not that, again, evolution, we see species changing, right? Some going extinct, some are developing into others, some characteristics, right, of a species remain, some fall away, right? So we do evolve, right? If we continue doing this, our thumbs are going to get pointier, right? Eventually, right? So we can
There's like
text better.
life out there of the planets, the universe and stuff. God controls all that too, right?
Of course, and we have no reason to discount, or to dismiss anything that God has done for us in the scriptures, right? Even if we find a little green man in Mars or Jupiter in one of the moons in a different star, faraway galaxy, right? But the exploration that we have is not just scientific curiosity. It's to disprove this when you're making it very rigid in the sense that, okay, God is a God that created the world in 7 days and created man on the sixth day, and everything's centered on man. Well, it's centered on God. God can make anybody, right? God, do I have a problem with God that making other species and other planets? I don't care. All I know is here I am. I want to know where I came from, why I'm here, where I'm going. Now, what would be a bummer if the afterlife is, in Mars. And then there's another one after that. There's another one after that. I mean, no, it's not. Okay. It's not. However, it's blasphemy is to refuse God's incarnation. Because if I can refuse God's incarnation, then my faults are no longer mine. I'm no longer bound to my conscience. It's actually everyone else's fault, including God's fault, right? Because I'm just an accident of just carbon molecules coming together, and I don't bear responsibility for my instincts. I don't bear responsibility for my decisions, right? Because I'm just a creature, of random evolution, and things are just completely random. Therefore, what I do doesn't matter. Right? What I do no longer matters. That's why blaspheming is so it's just attractive, to deny the divinity of Christ, to deny that we want God at a distance. We want him over there, and we want ourselves here. When I deny God's incarnation, then I am no longer responsible for my actions. So, to turn against his tabernacle, right, is to turn against the incarnation, right, to refuse Jesus for who he is. To turn against the saints, right, and those who dwell in heaven, against the saints and the angels, well, that's just being jealous, right? The beast is turning against those who are already living in the glory of God. So it was granted to him to make war with the saints to overcome them. What does that mean?
God allowed it.
God allowed it, but it was only bodily harm. It was only bodily harm. So it says to overcome them, it's just basically to torture them or to kill them, but not to take their soul. Right? The devil does not have power over our soul unless we give it. So all this where Satan is granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, right? It's not to overcome them that we are going to be forced, that we have no choice in denying Christ. No, overcome them means that, yes, he will defeat them, he will cause them bodily harm. And not because God is incapable of protecting us, but this is how we're going to receive a crown of martyrdom, right? I mean, after all, that's our purpose, right? It's nothing. I mean, everybody wants to go to heaven, just not yet, right? Is that our common theme, right? Right? Well, I mean, yeah, it's kind of like, again, through the COVID scare, people were afraid to take communion, right? Okay, because catch COVID and die, and I know that time it wasn't just death; it was the fact that he died alone. I mean, that's really the hardest part. But death, nevertheless. It's like, Father, you want people to die? It's like, no. But, I mean, if you die because you took communion, because you caught COVID from communion, what better way to go? I mean, right? I mean, show up in front of Christ and say, so, how'd you get here? It's like, well, I went, I took communion, I got COVID, and I died, and here I am. Well, it's kind of the same thing. Like, I was like, well, Father, what if I give and I give and I give, and I give everything I have, and then I starve to death? All right. So, what better way to show up in front of Christ than to say, well, here I am. I kept giving everything I had, and then nobody gave me anything. I starved to death. Here I am. What better way to show up in front of Christ? I mean, talk about showing up with the best chances of actually ending up in the right place, right? So here it was granted to make war against the saints and to overcome them. Oh yeah, God is able to protect the saints, but when He allows them to be tortured, as we know, through the lives of the saints, Saint Haralabos, perfect example, when he was skinned alive, right? So, but couldn't God stop it? Right? It reminds me of the Count of Monte Cristo, right? The guy ends up in jail and says, God will protect me. The guy keeps, it's like, whipping him. It's like, I'll stop when God shows up. I'll stop, And, God doesn't show up. And he finally gives up whipping him, and he'll do that every year. But if we leave this life, no matter how we leave it, we're never victims of anyone if we arrive with a crown of martyrdom in front of Christ. Okay? So this power will be given to the beast, and it will be worldwide, global nature of his power. And this is what makes it like never before, right? The Roman Empire had power over a certain area, but this will be in the entire world. That's what it says, every tribe, every tongue, every nation. And by either force or deception, all who dwell on earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. How do you read that sentence?
If you're not in the book of life, that means you've turned away from God. You've turned away from God if you're not in the book of life.
You're not baptized, right?
So, so at baptism, that's exactly what happens. Your name is written in the book of life.
So if you're never baptized, your name's not in the book?
We don't know. It could be written, right? So, like, so baptism at that moment, right? That moment, your name that is given to you is written in the book of life. Doesn't necessarily mean that we'll stay there.
Yeah.
It depends on what you do after baptism.
Because it can get erased.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It'd be like, yeah. Well, you know what I mean. Okay, it can be erased. If you don't activate your baptism, then what good is it? Right? It doesn't last. It's not like, all right, it's like, oh, I've been saved, and then I can do whatever I want. Don't worry about it. I've been saved. I've been baptized. The worst is like, well, I'm Greek. I'm sure I get it. It's like, no, it's like, I'm Greek Orthodox. There's got to be a special section for me. I'm from that village, the same village as St. Dionysius, right? My yayas, blah, blah, blah. I have prayed to the saints. I have relics of him in my jacket. We try to figure out, ways to put God in our pocket. It doesn't work. Right? So this is written in the book of life. Yes. At the moment of baptism, your name is written in the book of life. It could be erased. There's other people's names written in the book of life that were never baptized, but lived a life, of baptism or martyrdom in their own blood, right? We have many, many stories like St. Catherine, right? So the 150 philosophers who came to argue with her, right? And when they couldn't defeat her, they're like, fine, you convinced us, we believe in Jesus. And of course, the emperor got mad. He was going to have them all killed. And like, Catherine, please save us. We're not baptized. He says, you will be baptized in your blood. Right? There's many different forms of baptisms, many different ways by which your name is written in the book of life, just as there's just many ways where your name could be erased. We erase it. God doesn't erase it. We just say, how like at the baptism, the godparents, or if you're an adult, how do you say, in the catechism part, when you reject Satan, right? So do you then pledge allegiance to Christ? Have you pledged allegiance to Christ? Do you believe in him? Yes, I believe in him as King and God. Right? So you sign up to be in the army of Christ. And then, for whatever reason, you see the enemy, sometimes our own pride, our own problems, other people, pressures, like, you're called to fight and to give your testimony, right? As a Christian, it's like, did I say I was a Christian? No, 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 no. I'm right. No, I'm not one of them, right? We deny Christ quite tenderly, quite easily, actually. From small things like, right, sit down at lunch, big corporate, whatever, and I'm like, have blessing, I don't want anybody seeing me seen doing my cross, right? Or wearing my cross, or acting and telling people when, professing my faith, knowing my faith, living by my faith. Here I have a chance to, just kind of do things halfway legal, but definitely against God's will. Do I do it to serve myself or to get out of a bad situation? Right? Do I go by the rules of the army of Christ? What happens in a regular army if I'm no longer adhering by its rules? If I go into battle and then I run away, they might forgive you once, right? They might forgive you twice. Eventually, they will either shoot you, or put you in jail, or dishonorably discharge you, right? Isn't it possible? So it can happen that your name, well, yeah, you were a Marine, but not anymore, right? Yes, you were in the Army, but not anymore. It can happen if we don't stand as true warriors of Christ. Okay, it can happen. So this, though, however, sounds a little bit like predestination, doesn't it? Whose names have not been written in the book of life. Everyone else on earth will worship him, except for those whose name has been written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. But as we know, please never fall into the trap of predestination. God knows whose names are written in the book of life. But just because God knows something doesn't mean that he makes it happen. It's still our free will. Okay? Just as I know that if I do this and I let it go, which way would it go?
Down.
Down. Do I make it go down? Down. Okay? It's just because I know it doesn't mean I make it happen. Okay? So God knows everything. God doesn't live in time, doesn't live in a continuum, doesn't change his mind. God is in the past, in the present, and the future, all at the same time. And outside of those things, all at the same time. He knows who will be with him in the kingdom of heaven. Does not mean that we are not responsible for our actions or, in a sense, in charge of our destiny. Okay? All right. So please do not let that be a confusing thing for you. Yes.
We had the worst experience when my daughter lost the three babies. And at the hospital, because we knew, the doctor said, the priest was there, but I was on the air.
Okay.
So, why, we do that? Because the priest said, every person who comes at the earth is a sinner. And the babies, when they come out of the mom's,
Yeah, it may be lost in translation because, a baby does not have sins. We have the primordial sin, the original sin, right? But actually, we're not guilty of that sin. We just have the propensity to sin. And we're born with the consequences of that sin, not the guilt. The consequences mean that we are mortal. From the moment we are conceived, we are mortal. It's not like we're born immortal, and then the first time we, tell a swear word, oops, all of a sudden, now we're mortal, right? It doesn't work that way. We are mortal, so we live with the consequences of original sin, not the guilt of it. Okay? So we're not sinful, and that's why, we need to do an emergency baptism. But, with an emergency baptism, in the sense we kind of guarantee that that child's name is going to be written in the book of life. Not that God cannot write that name himself. Okay? But since our names are written in the same way, right? Somebody wrote it for us. So we, having that gift and that grace, that anybody who is baptized can do an aerobaptism. That's I need to be a priest. So since our name is written, we can then write the next person's name in there as well. But doesn't mean that God cannot write it himself. Okay? All right? So we don't know what happens, obviously, to the babies but we know they're there. We know they're there. We don't know how much they can see. Maybe they can see more if they're baptized or not. But we definitely know where they're at. Okay? We definitely know because they are innocent. They're not sinners. They're not sinners. No. They are born with the consequences of original sin, but they're not sinners. They, of course, in the generic form, we're all sinners, but they're not, in a sense, conscious. Even with babies, when they have a baptism, and it says in the prayers, because the prayers were written for adults, they're not really written for children. And it talks about, that may this baptism be for the forgiveness of their sins, both voluntary and involuntary. Well, they definitely don't have voluntary sins, but they can always have involuntary, okay, involuntary sins. It can always happen, especially with twins fighting inside the womb, right? So it can happen when you have interaction, or thoughts. Child can have involuntary thoughts, like, oh, mom's not paying attention to me, right? Or being sad, or listening to what's going on around you and getting sad about it, or, so we can have those influences on our unborn children. However, does not make them sort of, outside of God's grace. That, I need to put this child inside of God's grace. Every child, whether aerobaptized or not, is in God's grace. If we have the chance to do an aerobaptism before a child dies, okay, great. But, in the end of the day, it's not, one of those things that, God can do anything, and we know that he takes care of those babies. Okay. So, so the book of life, slain from the foundation of the world. So the foundation of the world, the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world, which tells you what? That God, when he made the world, he knew that he would be crucified. He would become the slain lamb. He knew whose names would be written in the book of life before even the world was made. Okay. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here's the patience and the faith of the saints. So these things will happen to those who face the days of the Antichrist. Okay, let's continue. All right. Vivian, like to read?
Priscilla,
Priscilla, I'm sorry. Like to read.
9 to, do you want it to
11, yeah, read the rest of the chapter.
If anyone has an ear, let him hear. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns, like a lamb, and spoke like a dragon. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. He performed great signs, so that he even made fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. and he deceived those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their forehead, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666.
Okay. Probably when you hear about the book of Revelation, you hear about this. Okay? You hear about the seal, the mark of the beast, can't sell or buy, the 666. And that's why everybody's fascinated with some of the secret aspects of this book. Okay? So, but then let's look at it. So the Antichrist will rule by, as I said, deception and force and wonders. He will mimic Christ. He will pretend he was born of a virgin. Basically, he's going to be a child of a single mother. Very much like Anakin Skywalker, right? Oh, I don't know what happened. One day I was just pregnant, right? I don't know if Star Wars fans. But he will convince the world that, his mother was a virgin, that he has no father. He'll be circumcised. He'll be over the Jewish nation, right? As St. Athanasius writes, that he will be from Galilee. That he will, and it's, of course, now historically speaking, there's Jews living in Galilee after all these years. But again, a human being, according to the prophecies from the book of Genesis, will be from the tribe of Dan. Remember back in chapter 7, when you have the 12 tribes of Israel? But Dan was not included because Dan will be the tribe whose descendants will be the Antichrist. So therefore, they're not counted among the 144,000 that we saw counted in heaven. Again, a symbolic number. How do we know? We don't know who the tribe of Dan is. We have no clue. All right? The genealogies in Judaism were kept for a long time in anticipation of Jesus, in anticipation of the Messiah. Right? The Gospel of Matthew, the Gospel of Luke have those genealogies that lead to Jesus and show him to be descended, one from Adam and Eve, obviously. Everybody's a descendant of Adam and Eve. The other one from Abraham, a little more specific, but specifically from the tribe of Judah in order to fulfill the prophecy. After that, we don't care for their genealogies, and the genealogies were not kept because the evangelists needed to prove that Jesus is the Messiah, right? And one of the proofs was the genealogy. One of the proofs is to show that indeed he is a descendant of David, he's a descendant of Judah. For the Antichrist, the proof of his life, basically making himself God, will be enough. We don't need to verify, this Antichrist, he can't be the real one because, he's actually from tribe of Benjamin and not from Dan. His life will be proof enough. You don't need to, in fact, it's not even imperative in our salvation that we know that a prophecy has been fulfilled and he's linked specifically to Dan. Yes. He has not come.
Okay, so in other parts of Scripture, when we hear about the second coming of Christ, we hear him coming from the cloud and everything. So why won't we know? I mean, just because the Antichrist comes from a virgin, single mother, or whatever, no, it's not Christ because he's already come, and the second coming is going to come different.
Yes, and yet many, as is evident here, many will worship him as the Messiah. Many will worship him as the Messiah.
Will he be Jewish? You said he'll come from the Jewish nation?
Yes.
So he will be Jewish.
He'll be Jewish. He'll be Jewish. St. Athanasius says that he's coming out of Galilee, out of, well, what's the nation of Israel right now? That he would love the nation of Israel greatly. It's, again, today, this happens to be the not just three hierarchs, but also the memory of Saint Hippolytus of Rome. And Hippolytus of Rome had actually written a book comparing Christ to the Antichrist. Okay, and I have a little passage here. So, I mean, if you read the whole thing, so you know I'm not making it up. Hippolytus writes a lot about who the Antichrist will be. And here's this section here that really has me kind of like, you know, why would people declare him to be the Messiah? And it says, above all, moreover, he will love the nation of the Jews. And with all these, he will work signs and terrible wonders, false wonders and not true, in order to deceive his impious equals. For it is where possible, he will seduce even the elect Matthew from the love of Christ. But in his first steps, he will be, gentle, lovable, quiet, pious, pacific, hating injustice, detesting gifts, not allowing idolatry, loving, says he, the scriptures, reverencing priests, honoring his elders, repudiating fornication, detesting adultery, giving no heed to slanders, not admitting oaths, kind to strangers, kind to the poor, compassionate. And then he will work wonders, cleansing lepers, raising paralytics, expelling demons, proclaiming things remote just as things present, raising the dead, helping widows, defending orphans, loving all, reconciling in love men who content, and saying so to such that not the sun go down upon your wrath. Okay, he will not acquire gold, nor love silver, nor seek riches. It goes on and on and on. Okay, so he's describing initially, right? The Antichrist was seen.
The behavior of Christ.
He will mimic Christ. Absolutely mimic Christ in order to deceive everyone to say that he has come back. He has come back, and he's going to establish a kingdom that will never end, right? And so he will mimic him in every way. He'll be circumcised, right? He will, again, do miracles. He'll be basically a monkey see, monkey do kind of person. You read the life of Christ and do everything that Christ did, right?
Will he have a false communion too? Will he do church and have communion, or?
Well, he will not get crucified. So he will not get crucified. He will not sacrifice himself. He will enthrone. So we know how we look at Christ's throne as the cross, right? So on the cross, there's on the top, Pilate put Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. But in our iconography, we put the King of Glory. The throne of Christ is the cross. Okay, which then he gave his body and his blood so that we can have a common life with him. The throne of the Antichrist will be the throne at the Temple of Jerusalem.
It said he would tempt even Matthew.
Tempt even Matthew, right?
What
Yeah.
does that mean?
There's a reference. That you should do even, no, select even the elect. This is Matthew 20:24. It's a reference to the Gospel of Matthew. So you would suggest even the elect, Matthew 24:24, from the love of Christ. Right? If you go to Matthew 24:24, find it there.
For false Christ.
Okay? For false Christs and false prophets will rise to show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. Okay, yeah. So this is what, again, this is the main person, right? The Antichrist, who comes as a servant of the dragon, which is Satan, and comes right before Jesus. Jesus will not come until the Antichrist has come, right? And then the Antichrist who will have global dominion. That has not yet happened. You had many antichrists, many people whose Satan has entered in order to stop the ministry of the gospel. Right? Remember, we talked about Satan entering Cain, to kill Abel, right? But then Seth was born, right? And then Noah, and then Moses and Abraham and Moses, and down to Judas killing Christ, only to realize that Christ was not killable, or at least couldn't hold him in Hades. And then you have the persecutions. Nero, right, tried to wipe out the Christians, and heresies like Arianism, and then Julian the Apostate, and so on and so forth, right? There's always Antichrist. So we shouldn't like comfort ourselves that the Antichrist is not here yet. But what we should know, that Jesus will not come back until these events have happened, until the Antichrist comes, takes global dominion, builds the temple in Jerusalem, enthrones himself in that temple, declaring himself to be God. Enoch and Elijah will point to him, and then Jesus comes. Okay? So those things have not yet happened. We should keep our eyes open, obviously, but those things have not yet happened. Some of the precursors have happened, as, well, there's a nation of Israel, right? Since 1948, there's a nation of Israel. It's a geographical space full of Jewish people, right? What has not happened, what stands where the Temple of Solomon was? What is there now? Mosque of Omar, right? A beautiful mosque Omar built. It's architectural marble. When you look at the skyline of Jerusalem, you see it. But how long does it take for the Temple of Omar to disappear? One backpack full of explosives will take care of it. Okay? And the Temple of Solomon is not a huge undertaking. I mean, the Temple of Solomon, the actual temple, was small, right? It was only about.
Mosque has to come down first.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a mosque now, so right in that spot, you have to make room.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't possibly even, put another stone there and say, let's put the
You can't like convert it.
right,
You
yeah.
can't use the same building.
No,
It has to come
no,
down.
no, no, it has to come down.
Okay.
It has to come down,
Like
it has
St.
to be.
Basil's was a tabernacle, or, a Jewish
Right, you can,
tabernacle.
yeah, we have no problem taking old temples and making them into churches. But the Temple of Solomon has to be.
It has to come down in something.
They have
Right.
a whole like ceremony and stuff they have to do before they can even enter the house.
Right, and this-
Sacrifices.
And the stones have to be brought from the outside,
Yeah.
because no hammers are supposed to be, struck
And they're
inside
like
the.
sacrifices again too?
That's the sacrifice
The-
of Esther is one of them.
Yeah, well, just recreate the Temple of Solomon. So, but it's not that big, because it was only for the clergy.
They claim it.
But I mean, but
Oh, is
that
it
has
like
to,
Red cow or Red bull or something?
right?
Yeah.
The red, was
Is
it the
that
red
what it's
cows?
for?
Red
It's
heavens?
supposed to be red heifer, it's supposed to be immaculate. Like,
Yeah.
they can breed one with no blemishes at all, and they've got like real specific criteria. But that's supposedly the first temple, the second temple, they like sacrifice it, like go through the whole ceremony, and then they burn it, and they use the ashes or something to consecrate.
But that's part of the Solomon temple.
Yeah,
Procedure.
yeah, but I think like they've been planning for this since Israel, since they got Israel back, because they've got farms trying to do it in Israel. They've got one in Texas that they've contracted that flies out a bunch. I mean, they're trying everything, CRISPR, genetic engineering. Like at some point, you can like decide.
Yeah.
So Father, the rooms in Jerusalem where Jewish people worship and do the Wailing Wall, what is that? What are those rooms of?
The Wailing Wall?
Yeah. that's-
Yeah, it's the last wall remaining from the old temple.
Oh, it
It's
is.
just one wall.
So, I mean, the mosque isn't on there. I mean, I thought.
The mosque is on top. The mosque is it's on top of the hill. Yeah, but the wall,
Yeah.
and then there's a couple of rooms there where, you have some artifacts and stuff, but the wall where they stick all the little papers, that's basically just the one wall from the old temple was destroyed 70 AD.
There's still tunnels and things where men and women go.
Well, when you approach the wall, you have two separate sections. You can't even approach the wall together. So there's a demarcation, the women go over here, the men go over here. Yeah. So, but it's just a wall. There's no temple there, right?
Oh, I know,
But-
they're underground.
but-
I know they have to-
In a sense, that's like the last peace, but we look for things again. But remember, think about all the things that we read about, third the part of the world, the oceans poisoned, the stars darkened, the what do you call it, the locusts and the wars and the armies. Remember all those things, even though they happen in some way or another, right, in different forms, but nothing to what is now possible. Right, things are now possible in a greater way, but not everything has happened. Yes.
Question. So when you look at verse 18 and it says like there'll be the mark and the number, like I don't know, so much of what we're reading is in a way how we'll be deceived.
Mhm.
That has got to be the most blatant, in your face, don't believe me because I'm putting this number on you, and anybody that has any kind of Christian background, that's going to be a flag. Like, will it really be that blatant, or will it be something more subtle? Like, I mean, and it makes me think of like now they have like nanotechnology where they can insert things inside you and they can.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is it going to be as literal as this verse says?
It's going to be a seal of some kind.
But it might
Okay.
not be visual, right? I mean, like when you think of the way technology.
You don't know. I mean, a lot of people thought it was inside the COVID vaccine. You know
I've always heard,
that.
I don't know if this is, real or not, but I've always heard that that's going to be very obvious. Like you can't be tricked into getting a mark. Like the devil
Yeah.
can't say like, oh, here, have a piece of candy. Whoops, you got the mark. Like you have to know that you're basically turning your back on God, and that's the whole point. Is what I thought. And maybe I'm wrong, but
It just
like
seems so blatant, and
but I
so
would
much
tell
of what
you-
we're saying is that we're going to be so deceived.
But what I would tell you is like when they talk about like that whole description of the Antichrist and how they'll try to mimic Christ, almost 90% of the Christians that I know probably never read the Bible. Never read the Bible on their own. And half the time they're probably only, if they're anything like I was for most of my life, like they're probably paying 20% attention at best when they're in church. And so like prior to me starting to try to read on my own and then really trying to pay attention more, like I had a pop culture understanding of like 90% of these stories. And when I read it, I go, oh, I didn't get the story at all. Like I had a completely, sometimes 360 degree or 180 degree understanding of what it was about. So if you check like half those boxes, like 80% of modern, especially the new age, like where they're up there with guitars and stuff, like they would probably follow hook, line, and sinker without thinking. And then you think about how many other people do you know that are real religious until, like you said, until COVID happens and you got to show up and give up your weekends and your free time and stuff.
Mhm.
Like there's gonna be a lot of people that when it comes down to, well, you can't go to McDonald's if you don't get the mark.
Yeah.
Get the mark. You can't. I have so many friends that like will do something that's against their own interest because it's slightly easier to just not push back.
I mean, but you see, like the point of ease, right? First would be point of ease, then it would be basically a point of survival, and also deception. So a point of ease would be like, right? Do I carry change or do I get an iPass? Right? And of course, if you carry change, it's twice as much. Now it's not even available, right? But okay, you get an iPass, which by then you give up your privacy. You know that the tollway authority knows where you're going and how fast you're going too. Because if you pass two toll booths, it knows exactly how fast you've been going the whole time. It knows, and don't you think they're not using that information? But okay, and they don't need the tolls. You have this beauty, right? Yeah, right. So they know where we are, what we're doing, what we're talking about. So ease. At first, it'll be presented as ease, right? Again, and it goes to an economic. Can you sell or buy, right? So during COVID, remember, like you went to some stores and they wouldn't take cash, right? And what if
moved us so much more to a cashless society?
to a cashless society, right? And then, of course, what happens? Your credit cards keep getting your identity theft, right? You get identity theft, we become victim enough times, and then be like, listen, you want to secure yourself, okay, get a LifeLock, right? Or whatever, I don't know those companies. You know what's an absolute identity theft, thing? Just put your credit cards on your phone, but then you might lose your phone, put your credit cards on this, and you're like, okay. And so is it then just an economic thing? Is it a control thing? Am I worshiping God because I wanted my credit card stored on my forehead? Right? I don't know. But I start to think. So is it just a convenience and a safety, security thing that I'm getting my identity on my forehead so I no longer have to worry about identity theft, like, face recognition, right?
Or
Retinal, right? So that because, if you've gone through having your identity stolen a couple of times, you'd be like, yeah, whatever, give it to me because I don't want to do this again, right? So,
And I think like our generation can at least remember a world with privacy. I look at my kids' generation, they don't even grasp the concept
They
of
don't value
privacy.
it, no.
right,
They don't, everything is like,
they don't care.
Because they feel like they have nothing to lose. Yeah.
Okay.
It's frightful how I'm like, don't you see that that's like you're giving up information? It's a big deal. Everything, what's the big deal?
Right. What's the big deal about?
It's so scary.
We care about privacy. Now, these signs are here that you cannot sell or buy without the mark. But my question again, which I haven't really answered that question, to myself, is how is that mark? Which is it presented as ease of your everyday life to worshiping the devil?
Can you say that again?
Right? So these things can be simply ease of everyday life, or it could be worshiping the devil, right? And I don't think that just because I got an iPad, my car belongs to the devil. Whether I carry a phone, that car belongs to the devil, or if I carry a card that has all my credit cards, or if that card, for some reason, I just tattooed it to my hand, but.
That's why you would start to say like, you shouldn't tattoo if you're a Christian, right? So like that would be a sign
Yeah.
to like.
Yeah.
Look to your faith and say, what little things of my faith what little nuggets am I giving up?
Right, exactly. And so at the beginning, it might be, how we got like, instead of the iPass device, now you have stickers.
Yes.
So now, could it be like, okay, get a sticker, and it goes on your skin, and you just care because, you don't want to get identity theft again. You don't want to get your credit cards. We won't give you credit. We want to insure you. And at the beginning, it might just be economic ease. No different than a toll booth that's half the price if you get a sticker versus carrying coins. However, your entire ability to buy or sell, which you need in order to feed your family, then will belong to whatever entity is controlling this thing, right? You have a cashless society. So then, right, if you want to be part of this society, then, well, if you don't meet the cultural points, then you don't have credit, right? It will lower your credit score. You can't get loans. You can't get any credit cards. You can't get any credit cards. You can't buy anything. Do you notice, like, so in China, right, you have a totalitarian system, right? You have a communist government, and you are supposed to be loyal to that government, right? And you show your degree of loyalty, right? And if you or your relatives or the people you associate with are not as loyal, right? So here, how here we have a credit score, right? You get a cultural score,
You
right?
get a family score?
Get a family cultural score, who you're associated with. It's not new. I mean, when Greeks tried to come to America, right, back in the 50s, and you had any relatives, cousins, second cousins, whatever, that were communists, known communists, guess what? You went red flag, just by association. So what's going to start happening? You're giving up control of your whole life for economic ease and convenience and safety and security, but then your entire life is controlled by a particular entity. But that particular entity doesn't really have your best intentions for your soul, rather than to keep you as a consumer. And what if culturally, right, you say, well, this man that's so good and nice is in charge of all these things, a lot of things, a rising star in the political world. Well, he's the Antichrist, right? Right? And I'm going to a church that says and preaches every day what Enoch and Elias say, this man is a bad man. He's a spawn of the devil. He's in bed with the devil. Well, guess what? Your cultural score just dropped. And guess what? This thing doesn't work anymore. So you either get another thing, right? So, remove your cultural score. Stop, having your whatever, your phone or your chip showing that you're in church. So that what I'm saying is that it's not just necessarily a seal, but a seal connected with giving up control of your life to someone who's running these things. At the beginning, might seem just done for ease, but when you've given up everything, that seal might as well be a denial of Christ. Okay, will it be straight up this way? I don't think the devil will be that stupid. Okay, so it might be presented just easily at first. It's for your own good, for your own security.
I mean,
Right.
even now they show that there's possibilities they'll be able to insert.
Like 10, 20 years ago, when I was a kid, they were trying to get people to chip their kids.
Mhm.
They get laws, they can scan it.
Yeah.
They do with dogs.
I think there's like a.
They do with dogs, they do it with the military.
Country that does that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
where you have like the chip. Like anytime they'd have like county fair or state fair, when I was a
No,
kid.
but I mean for paying, just like
Oh.
there's an inserted chip that you can get.
Oh, with your credit card.
And also like for security guards.
But if you think about it, like just today, like if you tried to live your life like as a middle-aged person, you're trying to work a job, trying to pay your bills, without a phone and the internet, period. Like you just, everything rotary telephone. You can't do those things. Like you
Yeah.
can't even call 1-800 numbers anymore in certain cases. Like you'll sit there on like some automated system that doesn't go anywhere and it'll just keep telling you, you should just go online and do it. You should just go online,
So, yeah, giving up control to a certain economic banking entity tied to a system that is all powerful and all global. I mean, those things are there, right? I mean, we see the systems already in place. Imagine what those systems would be like 50 years from now. Imagine those systems would be like perhaps after World War III, after some tremendous calamities, right? Because it's still difficult to imagine anyone gaining global control right now, other than perhaps in the financial world, right? But even there, it's still very difficult to gain global control, to eradicate cash from anywhere in the globe. But we see it, it's progressive.
So they're getting rid of pennies. They just announced they're going to stop producing pennies.
Pennies? Oh.
Cost-
So what are we going to throw at? What we're going to throw at freshmen on freshman day?
I mean, they're in the bank and the fact that it's still pennies. But so that last line, though, this is what I understand is it kind of seems like they're tempting people to try to figure out who the Antichrist is going to be.
Mhm.
But at the same time, like I always thought that most of these things that are told to you beforehand are never meant for you to figure out until after the fact that it's already occurred. So why is it saying let him with understanding calculate the number of the beast? Like, would we be able to predict it? Because I've always seen people try to do that in all different parts of all different like forms of Christianity. You see people trying to figure out, they're trying to decode the words and
Yes.
find some secret symbols or whatever. But would you even be able to figure out the person in advance, or is it one of those things like many of the other?
You cannot figure it out because many people tried. The closest, of course, and again, what was thought to be the Antichrist would be Nero. So if you put Nero Caesar, it totals up to 666. But is it the Latin alphabet? Is it the Hebrew alphabet? Or is it the Greek alphabet? And many people have tried to make names fit by misspelling them. And in Greek, you don't want to misspell your name, but if you try to misspelling it. So just for fun, I wanted to check my name. I'm 1244. you know. Telemachos is T is 300, and then Eta is 8, and then L is 30, Epsilon is 5, Me is 40, Alpha is 1, He is 600. So if you have a He or Psi or Omega, you're safe. So Omega is 70, S is 200. So I was at, so I was at 1244. I'm like, whew, safe.
Even like someone's name will in numerology equals 666.
So if you take the name, if you take the letters in the name, they'll add up to 666. But, there's so many combinations. So Demetrius had discovered, I was just curious. I was just looking at the combinations. Demetrius is 640. It's pretty close. So, yes.
But the thing though too is when you're trying to predict, you're trying to be God. You're trying to, because he's the only one who knows everything. And
Yeah.
Counteract, we could be afraid of AI and we could be concerned and just huddle in our houses and be afraid to go out. But the Antichrist will be here, but so will Christ. And we have to keep our eye on him.
Christ is always with us, and Christ will come to end all this. So, but basically, we would realize it afterwards, like, oh, his name does total that. Okay, great. But, hopefully we have figured out, but still the rest of the world would not.
But it seems
still
like
be
they're
deceived.
calling us to do something. So it's like, what is the meaning of that? Because it says, let him with understanding calculate the number of the beast. Like, is it call? Like, is it just telling us, like, be cautious? Or is it?
Well, just don't be deceived by him. Do not worship him. So many people will worship him, right? We worship him. And worshiping meaning that just abandon all other gods and be fine with him being like assign divine attributes to a person. Okay? That's it. You assign divine attributes. All powerful, all blessed, all miraculous, all pious, all peacemaker, right? Prosperity maker. So assign what we want God to be, and that's the problem. That's why the world will be deceived, because he will be what the world wants their God to be.
And then the people that are in the book of life will have the Holy Spirit, so they'll be able to see through it.
So be able to see and also realize, oh, by the way, his name numerically, total 666. That'll be another reassuring factor. But it's not the only factor, because a lot of names can be 666.
So it'll be another point of confirmation when the time is there, but not something you're going to be able to predict in advance.
Right. You can't, because it's a lot of combinations. And you don't know which lettering. Is it Latin, Hebrew, Greek, or something else?
But it'll be one of 50,000 other things that you've now confirmed when that
Exactly.
time is. Okay.
But the absence of the name, just like the absence of knowledge of when, increases our vigilance. So Jesus gives us signs. Jesus gave us a sign that the times of the end times will be like the times of Noah. What happened with Noah? Right? He said the generation of Noah was sinful, right? They become flesh. So then he tells Noah, build an ark, right? And then he starts building the ark. He's gonna, flood is coming. Everybody's gonna die. You build an ark for you and your family, or whoever wants to come in. And then also the animals. And then when you're gonna go in, and then it's gonna start raining, and then everybody will die except for you. Yay. Okay. So how long would it take to do this? I mean, it's a big boat, but 5 years, 10 years, 20. But in the book of Genesis, we see that the ark actually the building of the ark takes 120 years. Okay, 120 years. Now, Noah knew that after the time where he built the ark and got all the provisions and put all the animals in, that it was a matter of time. So he kind of knew the time. But the rest of the world also kind of knew. I'm sure they were passing by this ark saying, hey, what are you doing? Well, building the ark. It's like, it's not even close to an ocean. Why are you building a boat? Well, a flood is coming. It's like, well, it's going to kill everybody. It's like, you crazy old man. What do you mean it's going to kill everybody? Well, God says, You know, you've all become flesh, and guess what? Flood is coming, everybody's gonna die. And they're like, yeah. Okay, so they all ignored him.
Was he, I didn't know, excuse me,
Mhm.
Noah drank. So,
He did.
no, I mean,
He did.
when I saw the movie, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, is that why a lot of people didn't believe him either?
No. Forget the movies. Forget those movies are horrible. The
Okay.
Noah movies are just horrific.
But did he have that issue? Where did they get that from?
Well, because afterwards, after the flood was over, Noah did get drunk.
Okay, well, he worked
He did.
100 years. I mean,
No, he thought, well, what would you do knowing that all your friends are dead? I mean, here you are, you come out of the boat, all you got is your wife, your 3 sons, and your 3 daughters-in-law,
you don't see that. So
right? And all your friends are dead,
I didn't think
And you've
right?
noticed there's no one else even on the farms the way land.
No one around. All your friends are gone. Wouldn't you take a drink? You know? I mean, I would.
Well, I would wonder too if people didn't not believe him or chose not to believe him because, like, I would assume that if God chose him, he probably separated himself from everyone. He probably didn't partake in any of their, like, obviously didn't partake in the sinful stuff, but that probably meant that he didn't partake in the culture at all. And so he's
Yeah.
probably like a hermit, like a crazy old hermit guy that
Crazy old hermit.
laughs at and monks.
Building a boat on top of a hill,
Yeah.
right? But anyway, people was visible. No different than the church. Every church that is built all around the world
Everyone came knocking at the very end.
is basically, guys, every church is an ark. It's a testament. Every church is a testament that the end of the world is coming. Every church, and and architecturally speaking, they're built like upside down arcs, right? That's why they're built that way, right? So they are a testament. We, not just the bricks, but we as a people, right? We are a testament. We believe, right? What do we say on the creed? I look to the resurrection of the dead and the life of the age to come. Right? He will come again to judge the living and the dead. His kingdom shall, right? We believe in the end of the world. We believe that, well, not only everybody will die, this world will die. Okay? So we are a testament to, just like Noah, building a huge, humongous ark, not next to a port, but on top of a mountain, was a testament to God's proclamation that everyone would die. Anyone could have gone into the ark. Of course, nobody did, except for Noah and his family. And they went into the ark a week before it started raining. But they knew that it was going to be within Noah's lifetime. Now, Noah happened to live 600 years. Right? Back then, they lived a long time. But nevertheless, it was a finite time. Right? They knew that in the lifetime of Noah, this would happen. So we know that in the time of the gospel, which, we'll talk about the 1,000 years, it will come up later, right? Which is the time of the gospel. It's not a 1,000-year reign of Christ and all that stuff. No. It's the time of the gospel. Right? 1,000 years is a symbolic number. In the time of the gospel, the Antichrist will come, and then Jesus will come, and then history is over. Okay? Then history is over. We are a testament to that. And we say we must declare to the world, hey, everybody, if you don't come into the ark, don't come into the church, not just a building, but into the community of faith, guess what? You're all dead. Meaning, well, you're going to hell, right? That death is coming. You're going to stand in front of Christ. And if you don't believe in him, well, then you have no place in him. And there's no other place. Rather either be with Christ or be in hell. There's no other middle ground. In the Noah's Ark, was there a middle ground for Noah? You're either in a boat or you're seafood. Okay? All right? So, okay, well, it's true. Everybody else, well, the fish lived, right? They had a ball, right? I mean, lots of people and animals dead. So we know that it's a finite time. For Noah's Ark, it was Noah's lifespan. For us, we know it's a finite time. It's not the lifespan of any one of us, but it is a finite time nevertheless. The certainty of the Lord's coming and the end of history is always at play, right? And Jesus says, just like at the time of Noah, where people ate and drank and married and given to marriage and bought and sold, so it shall be, right? At the time when the Son of Man returns, okay? So that will happen. The vigilance, right here, doesn't show the name and doesn't tell us the time or the place. Noah kind of knew, right? I mean, God told him, go inside the ark and actually seal it from the outside, right? Seal it. A week before it started raining. Okay? So he went into the ark and then waited, right? And then he waited a whole week before it started raining, and then, of course, the flood came. But if the name needed to be known for our salvation, it would have been given. But what is better for our salvation? Obviously, as much as we would like to know the name, right? Obviously, is to be vigilant. You don't know the name, you don't know the time or the hour, just like we don't know the time or the hour of our own demise. If we knew, imagine if we all knew the time and date, we'd just party on, right? And then a week before we die, it's like, okay, time to go to church. Father, come over here. Any confession time, right? Imagine. This world would be hell if we knew we couldn't die until a certain date. Can you imagine? Yeah. So, yes.
I was gonna say when we were talking about the mark,
Mm-hmm.
could it be too like you do this mark just to make it through? Like you were talking about the martyrs, that sometimes the people just went along with it, and then it took them 2 or 3 years to go through catechism class and get welcomed back into the church. Maybe you just get the mark so to, I mean, let's be honest, suffer or whatnot. God knows your heart, what's in your heart. Like, I mean, could you be like a spy? So you're not,
Can you be a double agent? You'll be a double agent.
Smart, but really, you do know it's about this. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, can you be a double agent? You know, again, the mark.
Well, I'm just,
is,
I mean, God's going to be able to look at your heart. I mean,
right.
You can pretend you're a perfect Christian, but God knows right down to your heart what you are.
Thank God.
But you can't deny God with your lips and
Not that you deny
your heart. I mean,
Yeah, listen.
There'll come a point, something will have to.
They're gonna fly.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't talk about you have to renounce Christ. It just says that you have to have this mark, right?
But that mark is
The mark is
I
the
think it's an announcement of it through the mark. And I think, like, as I understand, once you get that, there's no coming back. You can't go back to the regroup. I don't know.
We don't know. The thing is, we don't know. Is the mark,
Well, the Antichrist.
again, the mark can be literal. Is it both literal and a mark of the heart? Do they go together? Is it a matter of God reading your heart, but then what you have stamped on you, is this a confirmation of that? Is it kind of a, yeah, can you be like, I'm a believer, but I carry the mark, somehow on the outside?
Don't you have guilt for doing that too? I mean, it's like these circles of hell that you're just descending more and more.
Right. Yeah. So again, this is
It's pretty specific. It says buy and sell. So,
buy and sell.
the
So
material world.
either you enter, right? In order to be, at the beginning, might just all be matter of convenience, but then it will be pretty clear that you cannot buy or sell unless you confess and adhere to this common and very prevalent belief that this person is God, that this person is God-like, that this person is a better Messiah than Jesus Christ. He is the Messiah that we should have come, because the Jesus that we know is old-fashioned. Okay, it's antiquated. We moved on. We had the Old Testament, the New Testament and now the modern Testament, right? Now we have a Jesus that understands us, a Jesus that is hip, right? A Jesus that is modern, right? If we let go of the old traditions.
Buddy
The-
Christ,
What's that?
you ever seen Dogma, which is it's not a good movie to watch, but
Yeah.
they got Buddy Christ. The Catholic Church wants to be more like outreachy. This is in the 90s. And so he's got like a statue. It's George Carlin's playing.
Oh, nice. Okay.
But he's
Yeah.
like, he's got this statue of Jesus. He's like this is Buddy Christ. They have some arts, like the whole movie centered around like them creating these arches and then blessing them. So walking through, like it polishes your sins. And
Nice.
So 2 angels, tall angels are supposed to do that. And then it's a stupid story, but the funny thing is the Buddy Christ is like
The Buddy Christ. Yeah.
he's smiling. He's more laid back.
Jesus, the guy you want to have a beer with, right? Yeah. Yes, John.
You know that many people have made the observation that the COVID shot fulfills a lot of the requirements in the marketplace.
Mhm.
You know, that's generally well known that it's a shot, it's in your body permanently, you detect it, if you have it, you're compelled to do it. Some people acquiesced, some people didn't want to do it, but they had to do it because they lose their job, get fired.
Mhm.
So, what do you think about it?
Right. Was it, again, I think it was a precursor to this.
Yes.
Right?
Or a test run.
As a test run that you subscribe to this, or you're locked out of, common society. You can't go here, you can't, right? You can't fly, you can't move, you can't, right? You can't go to a store, you can't go to work, right? All those things. And it was done globally. I mean, these are very perfect examples, now, I mean, I don't equate the COVID shot with the mark of the beast, but it will be something like that. Yeah, well, just because the Antichrist, if the temple was being built in Jerusalem right now, I would say yes. It's in your body. Yeah. Yes. But what it didn't say, what it wasn't, was like, okay, so for example, when you become initiated to the Masonic Lodge, right? It's a secret initiation. But one of the things that you do when you go in there, you're stepping on crosses, right? So if you look at, unfortunately, there's a lot of times we have crosses at the bottom of our shoes, or crosses on carpets. My favorite is the crosses on the slip things on the sidewalks, and so, but yeah, stepping on a cross inadvertently, is like, is that a door to opening to a little demon that comes into your life? Again, it won't, God would not make it so it'd be inadvertent, like accidentally. What it is, okay, the deception, as you say, the deception would be, he's allowing people to be deceived if they're not repentant. So if you continue to live a life of sinfulness and not repenting, time after time and day after day, right, year after year, you're not repenting, eventually he will leave you to be deceived. Okay? Right? And so, yeah, and so that might be like, the mark of the beast might seem like, oh, well, it's just arbitrary. But it might be an arbitrary trick to say, oh, I got tricked in order to survive. Will it be arbitrary? Well, what we need to do, we don't know how arbitrary would it be. Do I have to step on a cross or kiss an icon of the devil or the Antichrist in order to buy food? Or before I get the shot, do I kiss the the goat god? You've seen the images, right? What's his name? Yeah, that one, right? I mean, so that would be pretty obvious and evident, right? So that would be very clear, and you'd be like, how stupid can you be to do it? But Could it be that it's seemingly innocuous, but you are living a life of where you're not repenting, and God basically says, I'll allow you punishment, quote unquote, to be deceived and be, quote unquote, accidental, but it's simply a result of your whole life. If your heart is pure and not stamped, He will not allow you to be stamped with something that will condemn you, okay, without you knowing it. But if we are living a life of intentional sinfulness and lack of repentance, then, yeah, we could be stamped without realizing a clear choice, without kissing an icon of the goat god, right, before I get a shot or before I get a stamp. And then I find myself condemned because I have a stamp, right, or I took a shot with a chip in it as a stamp, but it's really a result of me not having God open my eyes because I'm living a sinful life, and I insist on living an unrepentant life. And God allows me to be deceived. After all these things and the calamities and the signs that I've seen, right, and the eagles flying and saying, woe to everybody, and right, all these calls to repentance, if I'm still not repentant, could it be that the seal might seem innocent? But basically, it seems innocent to me because I'm being deceived because of my prideful life, right? If I'm doing what I'm supposed to do with my heart, then God will allow me to see something that to the rest of the world might seem innocent. He will let me see the devil behind it. So I don't know if I told you that. Did I tell you last time the whole deception story of that monk that thought he was patriarch?
Oh, yeah, the one that almost walked off.
Right? Like that. So, right? He thought he was, he was elected patriarch. He was seeing things. And then he saw what was real. Right? When he did the sign of the cross, it was real. That's why I told people when to get the shot. Like, listen, if you need to get the shot, if you want to get the shot, whatever, just do your cross, and where they're doing the shot, put the sign of the cross, and take some oil and put the oil over it, and just do the sign of the cross. And, if you see, that the guy that's giving you the shot all of a sudden looks like he has horn on his eyes and stuff, then run away, right? We pray that God would let us see the true nature of these conveniences of economic access to everyday life. When we see, that's why we're praying that we are seeing it. And that's between deception and force. And the fact that all of our leaders, political leaders, even church leaders will say, hey, right? Yes, Mr.
Doesn't it go back to what we were talking about earlier in the book of life? We don't want our names to be erased. We have to have that relationship. Do you know God that He knows you? And if you maintain that relationship, because
Mm-hmm.
looking to the Lord.
Yes. My hope is in God and not in just science, I pray for my doctor. Hopefully the doctor prays, right? But I want the doctor to have a degree, to actually knows the science. But I also, my hope is first in God and then the physician, right? If I place my hope in my money, I place my hope in my house, in my strength, in my doctor, in my medicine, in my pills, right? Instead of God, I'm not saying to get rid of those things, but first God, then everything else that God has put into the world. But when I place my hope only, right, in the things of the world,
Hope that God guides their hand.
Exactly. So just like as I mentioned in the beginning of our discussion today, like, oh my God, somebody's doing voodoo on me, right? Well, if you are spiritually healthy, and that's our job is to be spiritually healthy, to be vigilant, to be hard on ourselves, right? To be going to confession, to receive the sacraments, right? Not just a good moral life. I mean, that's great, but you need the sacraments so that our eyes will be open, so that even when our priests and our bishops are telling us, guess what, that guy in Jerusalem is a real deal, and you're like, no, Father, he's not. But how dare you? You excommunicate it. Off you go, right? Right? Because that's exactly what's going to happen. Trust me. It's exactly what's going to happen. I mean, so it's going to come from the top down, not from the bottom up. Right? It's going to come just like it did with coal. Okay? It's going to come from the top down. That was it being the classic precursor experiment. Okay? Precursor experiment. How do you lock everybody out of the system and only allow them after they've received a certain protocol? Right? I mean, how do you lock them out of their church? How do you lock them out of their places of worship, out of their places of work? I mean, isolate them. The perfect social experiment, global experiment. Okay? So that was, again, these are things. Again, after 1948, the formation of the State of Israel, everything we need to have our eyes open. It's like the calendar turns, it's December 1st. We know that it's going to snow eventually. That is going to be, right? We read the weather. Jesus says, you read the weather, and yet you don't read the signs of the times. Be vigilant and be attentive and be attached to the sacramental life of the church and to each other, because you cannot have one without the other. That is the key. You know how you're not deceived? Right? Hey, what do you think? What do you think? Keep an eye for each other. Right? No different than Eve should have asked Adam, hey, do you like Honeycrisp apples? Maya brought me a Honeycrisp. Right? So, should have asked. Again, and yes, when we see the temple being built, then we know that is in our lifetime, that the Antichrist is alive, but he will introduce a new age on the earth, a post-Christian age. This is a better version of Jesus. And don't tell me that every single denomination, from the ones next door to every denomination that you meet out there, they're not presenting, right, a nicer, more accepting, more tolerant, more modern version of Jesus Christ. Don't you think all these are precursors to the Antichrist? Antichrist doesn't necessarily mean against Christ. Instead of, here's a better version. That Christ is old. He doesn't even know how many genders there are, right? So you want this one. This one is more understanding, more knowledgeable, more powerful. He brought peace and tolerance, united all religions, ended all wars, right? Done miracles, raised people from the dead. He's also born of a virgin, and he's circumcised and fulfills all the prophecies better than Jesus. And guess what? He actually did build the temple where Jesus, did not, right? So
all he wants to do is pull you and take you down.
he wants to be worshipped. And this is what he wanted from the beginning, and he's going to get it right before he gets it, okay? Right before Jesus comes, and then, it's not even a fight. Basically, he's taken and thrown alive into the lake of fire, along with the dragon and the beast and all those who follow him.
They go back in the abyss? Or he's just...
They're going, no, in the lake of fire. So, gone. So it's just what's called the son of perdition. He'll make many people being lost, right? But then he's lost himself, even though he thinks he's going to reign eternally, right? That's why he introduces a new age on earth, but it will be a New Testament. We have Old Testament, New Testament. This guy's going to be like, here's a new deal. Okay, here's a new deal. Forget all those canons, all those vigils, confessions, all that stuff is hypocrisy. You ever heard that before? Right? That stuff is hypocritical. Those who are worshiping and keeping the traditions and the canons of the church will be called hypocrites because they will judge those who are breaking them and who are teaching that those are old and antiquated. Okay? You understand that? Right? There's no, you know how in politics, if you don't like somebody, you call them Hitler? Right? So in Christianity, you call somebody a hypocrite. It's basically, you can't get out of it because whatever you say, you're already a hypocrite. So your word is already invalid. So if you are supporting what is written, not what you contest, if you support what is written in the canons, in the liturgical life and the sacramental life of the church, well, you're a hypocrite. In order to dismiss you, even though what you're saying is what is written, what is the tradition of the church. I'm not judging people that are not living up to them. I'm not living up to them. Okay? But just because I'm imperfect doesn't mean that I cannot preach God's message as I have received it. My job is not to modernize Jesus' message. My job is to disseminate it. Okay? It's disseminate it. I'm not, looking for customers. Right? If you have a restaurant looking for customers, you're going to, right? I always used to tell my dad, you named the store Cafe Bravo. And yet, the only coffees you have is regular and decaf. I mean, if you're going to name something cafe, don't you think you should have more than 2 coffees? But he didn't understand. Right? Yeah, it's the old-time restaurant, right? So, so I would give you, yeah, sure. This is the modern gospel. Don't worry about those canons. That don't apply to us. Don't worry about those traditions. Don't worry about those liturgy, just sing some hymns, we'll play a guitar, right, and just sing some hymns and, and do nice things. And again, so we should be nicer and play the gospel and to live out the gospel, but we cannot abandon the traditions because, well, they're just old and hard to keep. Okay?
Well, and all of us I think are of a decent, when I hear what you're saying, how do I explain this to my children's generation? Because when you say it's antiquated or it's rigid or it's, when I listen to the younger generation, it's everything you're saying, that it's too rigid, it's too judgmental, it's too hypocritical. They look to find everything that is inconsistent in it. And it's I can sit here, I can listen to you say what you're saying, and it's logical to me, and it makes sense to me, but it's so foreign to them. I don't know how to message that to my children without them giving me this backlash of
Yes, well, it's very difficult to see, right, how the Antichrist will be worshipped because of this sort of post-Christian attitude, right? And you say, listen, if you continue this way, right, you're going to fall away. Our job is to adapt our life to Christ, not the other way around, right? But all you can do is just ask them and pray for them and model that behavior. There's not much else you can do. And kind of think about where we were when we're 17. That's all. Where we were when we're 17. Model the behavior, right? Read the scriptures, say, hey, listen, just read the scriptures, okay? If you read this, you'll know, right? You'll know, wait a second, I see what's happening out there. They're preaching a different Christ than the one that was there before, right? Maybe I should stick with my Orthodox church and say, hey, this is, okay? But what happens is that the level by which Christ is adhered to is become political.
Yes.
Remove the politics. And I'm sorry if I make quasi-political references, it's not intentional. We should never have political conversations in church. Everyone should be accepted equally and never judged. Okay, let me put that out there. But the only statement we have, we adopt our life to Christ's life, not the other way around. Salvation is not the totality of our moral good deeds, outnumbering our bad deeds. Salvation is Christ himself. Remember we said, that's why it's important that he's fully human and fully divine. If you deny any part of it, then salvation, which is literally the coexistence, the commingling of the divine life with the human, or the human life entering divine life. Okay? Because human life is a creation, has a beginning and an end, unless God said so. So unless God shares his life with us, we are condemned, right? We are nothing. We go, well, because we condemned him to death, he condemns us to, eternity away from him. Okay? But salvation is to be in the same space as God. Okay? To be sharing the divine life, which is modeled in Christ himself. Christ is our salvation in his very self, the divine and human nature together. And through him, our life and the divine life can be divine and human life together. Okay? But the divine life doesn't change. Same yesterday. Actually, today's epistle reading. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Jesus doesn't change. My life needs to mingle in his, not the other way around. Unfortunately, our children are taught that Christianity is reduced to a Jesus moral teacher who is out of touch, and basically all that matters if you are a good person and you do more good deeds than bad deeds, into a contractual relationship of Jesus Christ with Jesus Christ, where Jesus Christ just becomes an arbitrary judge, an evaluator of our lives, but he's a bad evaluator because he's out of touch. So guess what? I'm just going to try to be a good person on my own. But being a good person gets you squat. Nothing. Salvation is not about being a good person. Good person is part of your adapting your life, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, adapting your life to the life of God and attaching it and commingling it. I mean, our central act is taking his body and blood and shoving it inside of us, right? Commingling our existence, our life with Christ. So we take our life, pass it through the water, right? We make it alive with the Holy Spirit and build that bond with God through Holy Communion. Purification, illumination, theosis, divinization, right? To be one with the divine. That is salvation. Unfortunately, the West has reduced Jesus into a moral teacher and judge who's out of touch. And therefore, we need a new one. And that's how you lay the ground for the Antichrist. Okay? But he's not a moral teacher and judge. He is a moral teacher. He's going to be a judge, but he is himself salvation. And when he says, if you love me, do my commandments, basically he's inviting us to share his life, put our life to share with his, to put one life. No longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. If our children could understand to go beyond kind of the moral wall that we have assigned, the moral role that we assigned to Jesus as this moral judge that's going to come and judge people from going to heaven and going to hell, and that he's a moral judge that is out of touch and antiquated. Well, we need to go beyond that. If we can teach them that Jesus is salvation in himself and the sacramental life, which requires being a good person, and then taps you into that life that leads to salvation. Yes.
One thing I think of too when you say that stuff is, morality changes. I mean, our culture tells us what was moral 200 years ago and what's moral today. And Christ doesn't change. And I think that's where the problem comes in.
Christ doesn't change, but morality has changed so rapidly that Jesus is relegated to being a relic, out of touch relic. So, and then you replace it with a much nicer version. That's what the Antichrist will be. Yeah. Yes.
You said it's not about how many good deeds you've done or if you're a good person. Your goal is to be like Christ.
Your goal is that your life
You said
and Christ's life becomes one.
Right.
How does that happen? Not through your good deeds. It's through the sacramental life of the church.
Okay.
Which requires that you are a person of good deeds.
Right.
of
What
good
was that
action.
other half you said that you have to be? I didn't catch that at the beginning, what you said. You got, because I have a friend who's like, well, you know, I'm a good person. I do good deeds. I'm sad.
Hmm.
But you want to be what? What was that other half that you said?
Sacramental.
Your life needs to go from purification, illumination, theosis. Your life needs to be in the same space as God. In other words, your life should be as if God is with you, inside of you at all times. And you also see Jesus in Christ in the person across from you at all times. Okay? And yes, then you won't sin. And yes, then you'll be compassionate and forgiving and all those things that we see as moral
And many people feel that they can do that without going to church.
without God.
Without.
But they can, but it won't save them. Okay? I mean, again, God can save anybody.
Right.
Okay? But for us, when we teach our children and, what we know as Orthodox is actually salvation is promised, right? So salvation can be possible to anybody. But we have a promise. We have a covenant. So we don't throw it away and take the covenant of the Antichrist. We have a covenant. Take, eat. This is my body, broken for you for the forgiveness of sins. The servant of God, Vahia, receives the body and blood of Christ for the
Remission of sins.
and life
Everlasting.
everlasting. Okay? Excellent. Okay? Do you see that? Do I say, servant of God, Vahia, receives the body and blood of Christ because he's nice? Because she made me soup, which is really good, actually. No. So do I say no? It's a gift, but it's a covenant, right? And so if I have a covenant, wouldn't I want to take advantage of that covenant? Or would I like to be on my own? Right? There's a question. But we have a covenant. Right? So those who have never presented the covenant, God will deal with them, and I know he'll deal with them a lot better than with us. But we have a covenant. We have a promise, which of course we have also put our name on, the book of life. Right? Do we honor that covenant?
Aren't we responsible for our godchildren though? Because we are their
Yeah, we are. Up to a point.
I mean, can you like
Wash your hands from them?
Not, I mean, and I'm talking like, you always love them, but I mean, I had a priest tell me once they become 18, it's up to them to pick up their cross and walk it. And if they have questions, they can come to you. But if
Yeah.
you see someone who's like going down alternative lifestyle that you know is not what we preach of,